first day of 2025 here in the US has seen two major terror attacks, causing heightened concerns over public and national safety. One terror attack in New Orleans left 14 dead and more than 30 people injured. The same day, a Cybertruck bombing at Trump's International Hotel in Las Vegas left 7 bystanders injured.
For more on these attacks, let's welcome in former police chief James Craig, along with president of the Crime and Prevention Research Center, John Lott. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
James, let me start off with you. Let's start with talking about the Cybertruck bombing. Police recovered information from the suspect's phone in which he called the attack a wake-up call. The suspect, Matthew Livensberger, was a decorated active-duty soldier allegedly suffering from PTSD. Police also expressed support for Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and RFK Jr. What do you make of this attack and of this profile so far we have of this individual?
Well, it's hard to say. You know, when we look at situations like this, there have been, in the past, other veterans, some suffering from PTSD, that have engaged in this kind of violent activity. I still think this investigation, because it's still ongoing, there's a lot that we still don't know, but certainly it's troubling. And a lot of conversation has occurred whether or not there's a connection between what happened in New Orleans and in Vegas. But again, there's nothing that can connect the two of them other than they're both U.S. Army veterans. No connection whatsoever. So it's hard to say what's going on with this individual at this point, other than suffering from some form of mental illness.
John, the Cybertruck suspect reportedly released a manifesto to a friend of his, another retired Army intelligence officer named Samuel Shumate, who subsequently provided that to the FBI. And in the manifesto, there were mentions of U.S. war crimes and clandestine operations, including gravitic propulsion systems deployed by both the U.S. and China. And there were systems, these systems are what power the drones that we've been seeing across the country, allegedly. So what's your reaction to this?
I don't know. I guess it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Look, to me, the bottom line of these attacks is just how many different ways people can go and kill other people that are there. I mean, are we going to regulate all the cars that are there? It's not really obvious how you're going to stop these types of attacks, given that there's so many different ways that people can go and kill people. To me, that's kind of the bottom line that's there. Can you identify these individuals beforehand? It seems very hard to be able to go and do so, almost impossible. And if you can't identify them, and they have so many different ways to go and kill people, it's a very difficult problem to get at.
James, as a former chief of police, I believe you were in both Detroit, and I think Los Angeles as well. From my perspective, the Cybertruck attack was like almost impossible to stop. But, you know, going to New Orleans, I believe they had barriers that could prevent the truck from going down Bourbon Street, but for some reason it wasn't deployed. From your experience in both huge cities, can you speak about what may or may not have gone wrong with respect to security in both New Orleans and in Las Vegas?
Well, you know, I got to tell you, I'm very disappointed in the police superintendent's response. She should have known. We're talking about New Year's Eve. In an area where a lot of people gather. This is not a one-time event. This is certainly something that happens often. I also hear that there have been mass casualty reports as it relates to that area that the mayor didn't respond to adequately, but the governor's office has offered, you know, state law enforcement to come in and augment public safety staffing. But the police chief making a statement that, well, I didn't know they existed. Well, why didn't you know? And what kind of planning went in ahead? We're talking about the Super Bowl is critical. That needs to be a safe venue as well. But what about the French Quarter on New Year's Eve? And then as a stopgap measure, they deployed police cars to, I guess, act as barriers. But why not in a planning process, look at best practices in other major cities, like New York, for example. We know that they deploy large vehicles, large city vehicles. When I was chief in Detroit, a big event, annual event, lots of planning, the Thanksgiving Day parade. We deployed in arteries leading up to the parade route, buses, dump trucks, large city vehicles that could prevent this from happening. So it's certainly concerning when the person responsible for public safety doesn't really know what's going on in terms of that area. Yeah. These barracks that were not operational or moved over to another, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
John, look, we spoke about this briefly before, but a lot of people are speculating this connection between the two suspects because they do have a lot in common. They were both Army veterans. They both served in Afghanistan. They both went to Fort Bragg. They were both...
At the same time.
At the same time, exactly. But they're still saying there is absolutely no connection. President Biden saying that, and the FBI says that as well. But, you know, and they also rented the trucks from the same app. I just find that there's no such thing as a coincidence, you know, that's the saying. So what do you think, really? Do you think we're waiting to find out more about them?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Fort Bragg is a big place. Okay, so is it possible that you could have two guys there at the same time and not be in contact with each other? Yeah, sure, that's definitely possible. But you're right. There are just a lot of connections there, and it just seems like you get so many connections that there's at least a reasonable chance that there's something going on there. You know, the fact that it's the same day, the fact that they were serving in these different places at the same time. You just imagine that I agree with you. It seems likely that something's connected there.
Yeah, it just seems there's just too much there, but I'm sure we will find out more details as the investigation continues. We hope, yes. James Craig, John Lott Jr., thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, coming up, we have plenty more after this break, so stick with us. We'll be back in a moment.